When I thought of the question of what needs to be done, I immediately thought of prejudice and discrimination towards marginalized groups, but specifically prejudice and discrimination towards minorities in schools. This really speaks to me because I've gone to predominantly white schools for most of my academic life, and I've firsthand experienced racism and microaggressions and bias in schools. And it's really something that has affected me and something that was really solidified when we read The Brutal History of Anti-Latino Discrimination, which was written by Erin Blakesmore. And she kind of outlined how Latin students were restricted from learning about their history in schools, and how a lot of their history was erased, and how they were forbidden to speak Spanish in schools and were discriminated against in schools just because they came from a different culture and were Latin. And so I feel like it's something that's so terrible and something that I feel needs to change if we want to see true equity and true equality in schools. And additionally, I thought about the school to prison pipeline that one of the facilitation groups did a presentation on, and how the criminalization of Black and brown students, it needs to be addressed and it needs to be dismantled. And the school to prison pipeline only contributes to mass incarceration, and especially mass incarceration of younger individuals, and that it adds to further destabilizing racialized groups. And so I think discrimination in general is abhorrent, but discrimination towards young people in schools where they're supposed to be nurtured and where they're supposed to learn and they're supposed to be supported is really dangerous. And I feel like today that we're living in a system where Black and brown kids are set up to fail, but if we work together as a society, and if we kind of put our heads together and try to dismantle this system, then we can change the current system that we're living in right now. Another thing that I thought of when I looked at the something that needs to be done question was representation in the media and representation of marginalized identities in the media. And this is something that I have devoted my senior thesis towards, specifically the representation of Black women in mainstream television. But when we watched a disclosure film in class, and how it outlined the representation of trans identities in film and television, and how they're often negative, and they're often being seen as victims, or they're often being portrayed as people who are jokes and people who aren't real. These depictions have caused very real ramifications and very real obstacles for trans people, and it is part of why they face so much discrimination and face so much violence in social spaces and in workplace settings. And so for me, representation of marginalized identities in film and television and the media more generally is something that is really important, and something that has very real effects on how these people get treated in actual life. And so I think that we need to fix the negative depictions that we have of marginalized identities, and work to uplift them in the media. The question of what identities I hold made me think about my family, and specifically being the daughter of immigrants and being the youngest of four. So I'll start with being the daughter of immigrants. My mom is from Cameroon and my dad is from Nigeria, and I always grew up hearing stories about how they came to the United States as young professionals, and even though they came from families with money and they had college degrees, they still faced a lot of xenophobia and a lot of racism, and my mom faced a lot of sexism in their experience. And so being a child of, immigrants, and growing up hearing their stories, and growing up also hearing, stories about, our culture, and like being Nigerian and coming from such a rich African household, is something that has definitely shaped my identity and who I am today. And then also being the youngest of four and having a lot of older cousins, and always looking up to my siblings and my cousins is something that I cherish. And I think that is why community is so important to me, because I grew up in such a big support system. So I understand the significance of having community and having people around you who love and support you no matter what. And I see how that has impacted my life and how that would impact anybody's life. And so being a part of a big African family is something that I definitely feel has shaped who I am today. Another identity that I hold is being Black and being a woman. And so I think this is like one of the biggest parts of my identity, my Blackness, and my identity as a woman. And I think there's such a complexity to being a Black woman, and as difficult as it is in American society, it's something that I hold. It takes a lot of pride in, and because it is such a unique experience and something that like builds a lot of character, I would say. And I say Black woman because my Blackness and my womanness cannot be separated in any way. And this was really well outlined in Brittney Cooper's dialogue in Eloquent Rage, in her discussion of intersectionality and how it is key when looking at the Black female experience, because, you know, the way Blackness and the way like being a woman interacts really helps me understand how these complex oppressions and these complex inequalities sort of like impacts my life. And I think it's, you know, intersectionality is important when looking at Black women, but it's also important when looking at any identity, really, because people are not just one thing. People have different parts of who they are. And so intersectionality plays a huge role in looking at my identity, but also looking at other people's identity. And to talk about like being a Black woman, I think there's such a complexity to being that, but I think there's a complexity to any identity in general. And our reading, The Complexity of Identity, Who Am I, reading by Beverly Daniel Tatum, outlines this further. And he says that identity is dictated not just by who we say we are personally, who we believe we are, but also who the world around us says we are. And so my identity as a Black woman, and understanding that Black women have been historically seen as subordinate in society, has influenced not only the way that I see myself, but also the way that other people see me and interact with me. And so my perception of myself has been constructed in part by who the world around me says that I am. Another identity that I hold is being a college educated student. And you know, I have to recognize that I go to Villanova University, which is a private Catholic institution on the main line, and I have access to an amazing education, amazing professors, and so many resources and so many connections. And I'm very privileged in the sense that I have the money to pay for this school, and I have time and ability to attend school and pursue further education. And so it's a privilege that unfortunately I often overlook and take for granted, but one that I complain about, but one that I'm also very grateful for, and thankful that I have. When thinking about what communities I'm a part of, I thought about the African American community, and understanding that I was born in the US, so I'm an American citizen, and so I have all the privileges that comes with living in the United States and having a US passport, and all the perks of living in an American society and an economy. And so I think that is definitely, you know, being an American citizen is definitely a community that I'm a part of. But I also am African. I was raised in Lagos, Nigeria for 8 years. So culturally, I grew up Nigerian, and I have, you know, very deep ties to my Nigerian heritage and roots. And so when we moved to the United States, it was very quick. Our parents literally told us we were moving, and then like 2 weeks later we were in a new house. You know, to just leave and start over and go to a new school and make new friends and just be completely accustomed to a new way of life. And so it was a very abrupt like merge of lives. And you know, just coming from like traditional Nigerian culture to coming to suburbia, and having to kind of just construct a completely different like way of living has definitely shaped me to be who I am. But I think being a part of like the African American community is a privilege, in that I'm able to claim both both countries and both cultures, and so it's something that's very unique and something that I really cherish. And to make it more localized, I am a part of like the Villanova community, but within Villanova, I'm a part of the Black Pre-Law Student Society, which is a student organization on campus where I serve as the programming director. And basically, we give pre-law students who are minorities on campus resources and information concerning law school and the law school application process, and just more information about, being in the legal field and pursuing law as a career. And we just kind of help them be better prepared to embark on their legal journey. And so it's a very fulfilling organization. It's great that I get to interact with younger students and help them navigate, Villanova if they want to become a lawyer. And I don't really want to become a lawyer right now. I'm like interested in law, but it's great to just be around very smart and intelligent individuals, and be motivated by kind of like wanting to help people and wanting to help students who were in our shoes just a few years ago. So that's definitely a community that I'm a part of, and I'm proud to be a part of. And I'm also a part of My Sister's Keeper, where I serve as the co-president. And MSK is a women empowerment group on campus that our mission is to uplift and support all women from all walks of life. And so we hold different events like wellness workshops, and we have speakers come to talk to us about, being a woman in the workplace. And we basically just work to be a safe space for those who identify as women on campus. And we try to build community in that way. So definitely a part of My Sister's Keeper. And additionally, I put here, I'm a babysitter of 2 families. So every day I enter, these families' lives, and get their kids ready for school, wake them up, make them breakfast, get their homework ready, get their backpacks put together, and make their lunches, and then send them off to school. And I think it's such a blessing to have a connection with families and be so involved in their lives in an intimate way. And it's definitely something that I didn't see as that big of a deal, but it is, a very trusting relationship, and one that I'm proud to say that people trust me with their kids, and I'm proud to, also care for their kids when they need it. I would say that one of my strengths is that I am a writer, and I've always been a writer. I've always found it easier to write my thoughts down and write my feelings down on paper rather than verbalizing them out loud. And so, like even something like doing this, like recording myself and like talking on camera, is something that's really taking me out of my comfort zone, and something that's like really just unnatural for me. But I think that's just one of the ways that like real growth comes from, is when you are able to put yourself in uncomfortable situations and kind of push through that discomfort that you feel. And so so writing has always been something that's come like super natural to me. And I was always that kid who had a diary, and I always had a journal, and I was always scribbling away, like writing my secrets and my feelings down, and just writing stories and ideas, or really just whatever I wanted. And now I know better than to write my secrets down on paper and have evidence of them. But I think still I love writing, just like either it be journaling how I'm feeling, or writing creative concepts and scripts for stories, and scripts for television and movie ideas. And even like in an academic setting, always would prefer write a paper than like take a test or something. And I think writing is something that I've been praised for by my teachers, and I've been praised for by people who have seen my writing. And so I am proud to say that it's something that I'm pretty good at, and something that I continue to work on and get better on every day. And I would also say that I'm a good listener. Like I said, I've always found it difficult to share my thoughts like verbally, and so naturally I'm more quiet and I'm more observant, and I listen to people. Like I genuinely love hearing what people have to say and hearing how people think and how they perceive the world. And I love learning like how people's minds work and learning just how, they just learning how people see the world. And I'm always that friend that people come to, like if you ever want to vent or if you ever just want to like ramble on about, whatever, like I'm the friend that people come to because they'll know that they'll always have like an ear and somebody to listen to for for whatever it is. So I'd say listening is definitely one of my strengths, and I would also say patience is another one of my strengths. I pride myself in being a very empathetic person, and I have a lot of patience with a lot of people and with kids in general, and I always try to meet people where they are and not force them to do anything that they may not want to do or may not be ready to do. And I try to let people navigate things in their own way and like just let them do their thing, and be content with how they choose to navigate situations. And so I'd say patience is something that is one of my strengths. One thing that brings me a lot of joy is watching television and being completely lost and invested in the story, the world of the story, the characters, and how they navigate and make decisions, and character developments, like seeing a character from season 1 all the way to like season 5. I love just everything about the story and everything about like television, from like the initial scripts to producing it and like making it a real thing, and like picking costumes and picking locations and like shooting and editing it. I think for me, like television is just something that I've been super passionate about and something that I've loved for so long. And so I just love watching TV. It's just something that makes me super happy, especially when it's like a good show and it's like, oh my god, like it's just something that I really love to do. And I also would say that I love being creative, and I love like creative things like music and dance and arts and writing, and I just love that aspect of like creating something out of nothing and like being in tune with whatever that is. So that's something that brings me a lot of joy, whether it's just like listening to music or just like like having a dance party in my room like at 3 a.m. I feel like it's a very great way to like let things out and like let your feelings out. And so I love creativity, and it brings me a lot of joy and brings me a lot of relief as well. And I also love talking to my family and my friends, and just love being with them, being around people who are funny and people who are good company, people who support you and people who love you and want to do the same things as you and will push you as well to be a better person. I think that's, having people around you is so important, and it's really vital to just living a healthy life. So yeah, those are things that bring me a lot of joy in my life. When thinking about all these aspects of my personality and my identity, and what I could do with, these different parts of me, I first thought about doing something with kids, like social work for kids. Like I said, I love kids. Like kids are so cool to me, and it's so unfortunate that there are a lot of kids in terrible situations in the United States, kids who are hungry, kids who are in abusive environments, kids who don't have access to schools. And so I would want to be in a profession that takes care of and uplifts kids, whether it's a community-based organization that has, initiatives to improve the situations of kids, or working at a school, or even working in the foster care system. I think I would want to do something that prioritizes the betterment of underprivileged youth in this country. And I'm also interested in law, and so one of my communities that I said I was a part of is the Black Pre-Law Student Association. And so I'd be interested in possibly doing family court and working with families on a more personal level, like how I do kind of now with babysitting. It's kind of similar in that it's a very personal relationship, and you get to kind of like get an inside look into somebody's life and their family situation. But I think, a concrete action plan that I could do is like being a family court lawyer and working with kids and helping them get reunited with their parents or helping them get in better situations. Ultimately, like, my goal would be to uplift underprivileged youth, and so I just want to like be in a profession where I'm able to better their circumstances so they can really thrive in the future. Another action plan that I have is that I want to work to increase diversity on screen, and I want to write stories about characters with marginalized identities and have them uplifted in stories on screen. I think media is not just something that we watch, it's something that can influence and change how we act towards people in real life and the things that we believed. And so understanding this, like, I want to be a part of stopping the misrepresentation of marginalized people on screen and show the true depth and variety to the experiences of people who are often outcasted and left out of mainstream society. I would love to create a kids show one day about black hair and work to dismantle like stereotypes and prejudice on people's natural hair. I think, thinking about like uplifting kids and also like uplifting marginalized identities, I think, and creativity, I feel like this is like a great lane to help people in our society, like being a creative. And I love television and stories and I love kids, and so I think, writing uplifting stories about marginalized identities is the perfect intersection of all those parts of who I am. And it's something that has the potential to have real meaning as well as like real joy and power behind it.